الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue إن شاء الله تعالى with the book of أقصى المختصرات and the كتاب المعاملات, the transactions. And the last thing we talked about was شروط البيع, the conditions for البيع, the conditions for البيع, and talked about the different conditions and also the subject of تفريق الصفقة when there's more than one transaction. And we stopped at what he says الشروط في البيع, right? والشروط في البيع. Uh, and this is the part where it talks, and we mentioned that before in the previous book. We talked about there is شروط البيع, the conditions of البيع or buying and selling, and there's الشروط في البيع, conditions within the transaction, not the conditions of transaction, not the conditions of buying and selling, but the conditions in that, basically something that depends on both the buyer and the seller. They can have their own conditions. So the difference between both is that when it comes to the first conditions that we talked about, the conditions of al-bay', taradi, to be with acceptance with both and things like this is from the wahy, from the Quran and the Sunnah. These are conditions that has to be fulfilled. The conditions in buying and selling, this is basically up to the individuals, up to the buyer or the seller. They want to introduce a condition. And we'll talk about it. He has a condition for the car to be this or to be that. So this is separate than the conditions that is in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And also when it comes to if these conditions are not fulfilled or not met, right? So if the conditions were the previous ones, it invalidates the transaction. But the conditions in buying and selling, it's different. It makes the contract not binding. So that means the buyer and the seller, they might agree upon something. And if one did not fulfill that condition, then the other person is not binded with the transaction. He can, return or say he's not going to go forward and things like this. So, and that's why it's not, because it's not from the Shara, it's not from the Deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they can agree to not to have it to start with. So it's the extra conditions that people would have in the contract. But when we go through the words here, he says, وَالشُّرُوطُ فِي الْبَيْعِ ضَرْبَانِ. So that what makes it, or what makes the difference in the matn, in the statements of the book, is شروط البيع. This is what شروط البيع. شروط is conditions. البيع is buying and selling. So شروط البيع is the conditions of buying and selling. Here والشروط في البيع. في. This is the extra conditions that is not related to the core of the transaction. Clear? It is of two kinds. ضربان. الضرب is not necessarily hitting. It depends on the context, but it means here ضربان, that means two types, two kinds. صحيح وفاسد يبطل وفاسد لا يبطل. صحيح, that means a valid condition. فاسد, that means not صحيح, which is not correct. And fasad is something when something is not upright, when something is corrupted, when something is not valid. So here it's not valid. يبطل, that means it negates the contract. And the third one, فاسد لا يبطل. The condition is fasid, is invalid, but it doesn't invalidate the contract. We have three here. The first one, صحيح, valid condition. And if you're following with the book, again, because we're going word by it, كشرط رهن كشرط رهن وضامن وتأجيل ثمن. We'll take it one by one, inshallah ta'ala. كشرط رهن. So شرط رهن. Uh, so he says here, شرط رهن, condition of رهن. الرهن is what? is when something is put as a collateral. When someone goes to the pawn shop and he leaves something in return for money, he said, this is rahan. And rahan is a chapter by itself in the transactions. So كشرط رهن, which means someone would uh, sell a car and the person's supposed to pay the money, but he doesn't have all the money with him. He's going to choose to pay it on payments, for example. That's fine. But give me something as a rahan, something as a rahan to keep with me till you give me all the money. So this is a valid condition. It's okay. This is a way that a person would save his money, make sure that his money get paid to him. And there's conditions for the rahan, there is rulings for the rahan, and this is a separate chapter. We'll talk about it inshallah ta'ala. But here we're looking from the perspective of this is a condition that is not a must in the contract. Person can buy and sell without having something as a collateral or something that can be kept on the side. But here this is a valid thing. كشرط رهن وضامن. الضامن is the guarantor, someone that would guarantee the contract. Something to guarantee it or someone would guarantee it. So this is definitely is part of something that is good for the contract to be valid, in which a person would have a daman, something that would guarantee that the person will pay what they agreed upon. كشرط, he says وضامن. A damin is an individual, can be a co-signer, right? If you're not able to pay, then that co-signer will pay on your behalf, and it becomes binding, right? So this is damin. A daman is something that guarantees, and there is also details for a daman. There's details for the contract of a daman or something that be of a guarantee. So this is the condition. وتأجيل ثمن. Another also valid صحيح condition is تأجيل ثمن. ثمن is the price. تأجيل is to defer it, to make it deferred. So to delay the payment. And the transaction is valid. So a person purchased again a car, but he doesn't have all the money. So you would say, I will give you now half, and then the rest I'll give it to you after a week. If they do the transaction today, then it's his. He owns it. But that's different than would say, well, let us then next week come and I'll sell it to you. I'll promise I'll sell the car. I will sell the car to you. That means that he didn't sell it yet. But if he sold it now, that's fine. Even if he didn't take a penny, that's fine if he sells it now, and the money can come later. So here, who would want to have that condition in? The buyer. So the buyer doesn't have the money, so he might make a condition that I would keep something to be paid later. So this is a condition in the contract of buying and selling, not a condition of it. So, and he says, وكشرط بائع نفعا معلوما في مبيع كسكن الدار شهرا وكشرط, and the example of شرط condition بائع نفعا. بائع, the one that is selling, نفعا معلوما, he would have a condition, a well-known benefit. It has to be well-known. في مبيع. مبيع is the commodity that is being sold. كسكن الدار شهرا, like living in the house for a month. So the one that is the seller, which is the بائع, if you see the words, وكشرط, kaf here is the kaf of and the like of. So this is another example. شرط is a condition. بائع is the seller. نفعا, he conditions, the seller will have a condition, a benefit. He wants a benefit for himself, the seller. معلوما, as you said, every word is meant to be. معلوما, that means the benefit has to be well known, clear, not ambiguous. في مبيع, in the thing that he's selling, in the مبيع, in the commodity that he's selling. For example, كسكن الدار شهرا, like living in the house for a month. He sell his house today, but he would make a condition in the contract. It's not his anymore, but with a condition that I would live for it for a month, for to the end of the month, right? So this is a condition, even though he doesn't own it anymore. He sold it, he took the money, everything is fine, but he makes a condition, I want to stay in it for a month. So this condition is valid, it's sahih. And who's the one that is making that condition? The example here is the seller is making the condition. And it's with a benefit, and it's ma'loom, it's a well-known benefit. He cannot say with the condition that I live in it as long as I'm sick, or as long as I live in it till my son comes back from traveling. It's not ma'loom. It's not known exactly till when. So this condition becomes invalid then in that case. Right? So it has to be a well-known benefit that, that's why the word ma'luman. So again, we say وَكَشَرْطِ بَائِعٍ نفعا بائع with a tanween because it's any بائع, any seller. نفعا is the benefit. معلوما well-known. في مبيع. البائع is the seller. المبيع is the thing that is sold. كسكنة, and the kaf here again is like سكنة living. الدار the house شهرة. Is it clear? طيب. or مشتر. Now he's going to mention an example for the mushtari. And mushtari is the purchaser, is the buyer. And they mentioned some examples, and it shows that these conditions can be with no limits. People can introduce conditions that were not known previously, as long as it fulfills these conditions. So an example here, أو مشتر, now a purchaser. مشتر أو مشتر نفع بائع, that he would the purchaser, he would make a condition as a benefit. نفع بائع كحمل حطب أو تكسيره. That he would, the condition that for the حطب, الحطب is what? Is the wood. To carry the wood. كحمل حطب is like حمل, carrying the wood. He purchased wood, but he purchased it in the store. But he makes a condition, I want this wood to be delivered in my home. They can agree or disagree. The delivery cost is not that much, or without any cost. They negotiate. So he says, I'll purchase all of the whole thing from you, but with the condition that no delivery fee. You'll deliver it. That's a condition in the contract. So either he agree or he doesn't agree. كحمل حطب أو تكسيره, or تكسيره الكسر is to break it. He doesn't want like this. He wanted to be cut it in a certain way. Right? So he makes a condition that I would purchase it, but you have to cut it for me. So these conditions are not the only conditions, but it shows that it's valid conditions, whether it's from al-ba'i', from the seller, or from the buyer, from al-ba'i' أو المشتري, بائع أو مشتري. But with the condition to be valid, it has to be the mabi' or the sold. In the matters of the sold, it has to, or a benefit, whether it's in the sold, the matter that it's sold, or a benefit in it, but it has to be ma'loom, it has to be well known, and not haram, of course, and things like this. So this is the sahih. But then he says, وَإِن جَمَعَ بَيْنَ شَرْطَيْنِ بَطَلَ الْبَيْعِ. وَإِن, if he جمع, brought together, بَيْنَ شَرْطَيْنِ, between two conditions, بَطَلَ الْبَيْعِ, the bay'ah is not valid. This is a mas'ala here. What's the mas'ala? If you have two conditions in one transaction, does it invalidate the transaction or not? According to what's mentioned here in the madhab, and that it becomes invalid. What is the meaning of two conditions? Like what's mentioned before. He has a condition that he would stay in the house for a month, and that he has to have someone to carry all of his furniture to the other house. Two conditions. According to this, the transaction is not valid. You can have only one condition. There's an evidence to that, but some of the ulama, and this is the contemporary fatwas upon, and also without going into the difference of opinion, that it's okay to have more than one condition, as long as it's valid and clear and so on. And this is how people, they do things. So this is, again, we're going by the matn, word by word there. So that last statement, you can put a note on the side, but what's happening now, even though we said we're not going to explain things of how things are now, But just to, if anybody has a question, it's allowed to have more than one condition if it's well known, according to many of the ulama. And this is what the contemporary fatwas upon the ulama is upon. The second type is fasid. وَفَاسِدٌ يُبْطِلُ. A condition in the contract that is fasid or it's corrupted, it's invalid, it invalidates the contract. So invalidates the contract. He says كشرط عقد آخر من قرض وغيره. Like the example of عقد آخر, another contract. من قرض, whether it's a loan or غيره or any other contract. So you have now a contract of buying and selling, but you have a condition in it that you would have another contract. So the contract to purchase the house, what's the condition of purchasing the house? That you would give me a loan, $1,000. So you have two transactions here in one. That's not permissible. Invalidates both contracts. And this is why, for example, you have the subject of rent to own. Why it's not valid? It's fasid because it's two contracts in one. It's not a condition in a contract. No, it's a condition, but with another contract, a completely different transaction. So two transactions, completely different, two contracts cannot be together in the same. So كشرط عقد آخر من قرض وغيره. قرض, loan, anything else. أو ما يعلق البيع, or another thing that is facet and it invalidates the contract. ما يعلق البيع. التعليق is something hanging, or here it means something conditioned. Makes the bay'a, makes the selling or the deal here is conditioned. كبعتك إن جئتني بكذا أو رضي زيد. So he conditions the transaction with like, I would sell it to you if you come to me with this. If you bring this to me, I will sell this to you. If Zaid is pleased with the transaction, it's sold to you. And you have to be careful with the wordings. I hope it's clear. This here, what is meant is conditioning the bay'a. That means what? Listen to what I'm going to say now. If someone is purchasing something from someone, and he would say, the car is sold to you if you bring this to me, something, it doesn't matter. What did I say? Sold. That means the bay'a or the buying and selling is done, but conditioned with something else. Okay? Or again, the car is sold if Zaid is pleased. If my wife will agree, it's yours. That means what? That means it's not yet his. But if his wife agrees, it's his automatically. That's different than saying, now the other form, if I say, for example, the car, I will sell the car to you if my wife agrees. That's a huge difference, right? That means it's not sold yet. I will. So if the wife agrees, he can say, sorry, I changed my mind. I mean, it's just a promise. It's not binding, right? So why? Because the first one, it's already a deal. I already sold the thing. This is what is meant here, that this is an invalid condition in the contract. أو ما يعلق البيع. You know, the ta'liq is to have a condition. It's the same thing as the divorce with a condition. If someone says to his wife that if she leaves the house, she is divorced. This is what a conditional statement, right? So if she leaves the house, she's divorced immediately. Doesn't matter if it's an emergency. If there's a fire in the house, okay, she's divorced. It doesn't have to be unless he makes another condition. If you leave the house in the morning, if you like this. But that's different than saying, if you leave the house, I will divorce. You get it? Why? Because if she leaves the house, he can either divorce or not divorce. I will divorce. It's major difference than to say, if you leave the house, you are divorced. This is the word أو ما يعلق البيع. So I'm not sure even if the book is translated, what would they say? So تعليق البيع can be understood, right? That you would make a condition for the buying and selling. That means if this happened, I will sell. No, that means you already sold the thing if that condition is met. So this is not permissible and it invalidates the contract because it makes the matter ambiguous, right? So it has to be clear to avoid all kinds of haram things, and there's evidence to it, inshallah ta'ala. The third one, فاسد لا يبطل. So it's important for us to know the three categories. The third one is fasid. The condition is fasid. The condition is not right. It's invalid. لا يبطله does not invalidate the contract. So the contract is correct, but the condition is not correct. That's different than the previous one. Previous one invalidates the contract. So I read it. والشروط في البيع ضربان صحيح كشرط رهن وضامن وتأجيل ثمن وكشرط بائع نفعا معلوما في مبيع كسكنى الدار شهرا أو مشتري نفع بائع كحمل حطب أو تكسيره وإن جمع بين شرطين بطل البيع وفاسد يبطله كشرط عقد آخر من قرض وغيره أو ما يعلق البيع كبعتك إن جئتني بكذا أو رضي زيد وفاسد لا يبطله كشرط ألا خسارة أو متى نفق وإلا رده ونحو ذلك وإن شرط البراءة من كل عيب مجهول لم يبرأ. Let's take the hadith first, inshallah, and then if you have any questions, inshallah. جمع علوم والحكم. What was the last one, if you don't mind? 136. 136. So hadith number 137. Hadith 137. Important hadith, like all the hadith, inshallah. Hadith 137. You there? عن أبي مسعود البدري رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن مما أدرك الناس من كلام النبوة الأولى إذا لم تستحي فاصنع ما شئت فاصنع ما شئت رواه البخاري. طيب the hadith by Abu Mas'ud al-Badri رضي الله عنه, that the messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said إن مما أدرك الناس, indeed from what أدرك الناس, what reached the people, من كلام النبوة الأولى, from the speech, from the kalam of the first of the prophethood. That means it's from the words that came from before, from the messengers before, from the very beginning. From the very beginning of prophethood, something that prophet after a prophet had mentioned the like of that statement. That's what it means. إن مما أدرك الناس من كلام النبوة الأولى, from the words of the first prophethood. Something of old in sending that message to the people. إذا لم تستحي فاصنع ما شئت. If you don't تستحي, if you don't have shyness, do whatever you wish. فاصنع ما شئت. إذا لم تستحي فاصنع ما شئت. So this is a warning and not approving for a person to do whatever they want. It shows the importance of shyness, modesty. And al-haya is a khuluq, is a manner that carries the person to stay away from what is condemned or what looked down upon. And we know what shyness means. Someone would not do something, doesn't have to be in the categories of haram and halal only. Something that people would abhor or look down upon an action. So a person would be shy to do it in front of them. And even children, they have shyness, which is the shyness is an important subject in the deen of Islam. And it's even, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لِكُلِّ دِينٍ خُلُقًا, for every deen, it has its manners that is known by. وإن خلق الإسلام الحياء. One of the khuluq, the manners of the deen of Islam is al-haya, is shyness, is modesty, which is a very well known for a Muslim. A Muslim is modest. This is something that anybody can recognize. If they want to describe Islam, if they want to describe the Muslims, they would mention the word modesty in them. So this shows the importance of the haya. And when the Prophet ﷺ passed by someone that he was ya'id akha, he was advising his brother not to be shy. As many people they say, don't be shy, don't be shy. The Prophet ﷺ forbade him. And he told him that this is the manners of our religion. Of course, the word can be misused by people. Shyness is what prevents the person from doing something bad, whether it's haram or something that is not liked by the people, as long as it's not, of course, part of the deen. So if someone is doing something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with, but people don't like it, he should not be shy. He should be firm upon it. Even if people don't like it, he should not be shy. He should do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him to do. Or if people call shyness when someone is shy not to ask about matters of his religion, that's not a good shyness. This is not a good thing. So someone, for example, reached the age of puberty, is not asking about the rulings of the tahara, purification, whether it's a male or a female, how one to take a shower, when to stop making salah, things like this. And they think that their shyness is stopping them from this. This is a bad thing because that means this is going to affect their deen. So, but the shyness here, which is something that is recommended, it's part of the deen, is that makes the person would feel disturbed when he's doing something wrong. Because if a person doesn't have this anymore, what happens? He'll do whatever he wants. And people think that this is a courageous thing. It's someone that has confidence in himself and all of these things. If it's in doing wrong, this is a bad attitude. It's a bad thing. People should have shyness from even from the elders of their community, from their parents, from people in general. And of course, the most important thing is to be shy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He's watching us and seeing us and He's hearing us subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are many texts and many hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, when he said to the people, Istahyu min Allah, have shyness from Allah. And they said, we make shyness from Allah, O Prophet of Allah. He said, Istahyu min Allah haqq al-haya, the right it ought to be. Then he said, أن تحفظ الرأس ما وعى وأن تحفظ البطن وما حوى وأن تذكر الموت والبلى. That the true shyness from Allah is that you guard your head and what's in it, your eyes, your ears, not to fall into the haram, and you guard your inside so that you don't eat haram and things like this, and to remember death and the decaying of the body afterwards. This is all the sign of the shyness from Allah. And whoever wants the hereafter, ترك زينة الدنيا, would leave the adornment of this life for the sake of the hereafter. So this is the hadith. And it's just briefly, otherwise, the subject of al-haya is an important thing for both men and women. And there's implications to it, lowering the gaze, women wearing hijab, all these types of things. No free mixing between men and women. Shyness, that the ummah should be upon. Once this is removed, as you hear the warning, فَاصْنَعْ مَا شِئْتَ, do whatever you wish. That means you are warned then. It's not approving the evil actions. That means you will do whatever you want to do, which is not the way of those who are righteous and obedient to Allah. We'll stop here, inshallah. The attendance code is shart, I guess, or condition. That's okay. Shart I guess if we do it with a D, is that okay? SHARD or condition. I can use either word, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. If there's misspelling, it's okay, inshallah. طيب here uses the term benefit, not collateral. Collateral is something that is held, something physical, just so are not confused here. Yes, it's a collateral. This is part of the conditions of a aqd that is for the benefit of the aqd. Someone would leave his expensive watch, till he pays off his the money that he owes for the car. That's fine. This is what is meant. Now, فقدان أو عدم كفاءة deficiency عيب defect. Defect is عيب. نعم, the عيب is defect or something wrong with it. نعم, جزاكم خير. Deficiency عدم كفاءة وفقدان القدرة. I'm not sure this is a وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Deficiency. Okay, so basically the comment here that the word deficiency refers to not being adequate or not having the ability to do things and not defect. So this is my fault in using the language. So when you have something, so let's make it clear. If someone is selling a car and it has a defect, you understand what that means, right? But if the car has a deficiency, is it something else? So it's both, the outcome is the same. So whether it has a defect, عيب, that means the transmission is broke. Or it has a deficiency. The deficiency is the same thing. It's not broke, but it's not acting properly. Right? Either way, it's a عيب or a defect in the car that you can return it. You don't have to keep it because of this problem in it. No. طيب, anything else إن شاء الله؟ طيب, بارك الله فيكم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وسلم. And again, if it sounds difficult because of the wordings of it, alhamdulillah, it's been mentioned in English, so hopefully it's clear. So we need to make sure that the mutun of the book of Al-Ilm is like book of Allah. It doesn't have to be necessarily easy in categorizing things, but it's our job is to make it easy for you to remember it, inshallah ta'ala, and to study it, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم ربنا بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.